All right, I think I'm recording. Let's go. All right. Good evening, everyone. This is Martin Walker from Independent Black Voters. We are here interviewing candidates for every office that we can so that you are more informed voters. We are a nonpartisan group, as everyone should know. We are not looking for any party, but we're looking to inform and educate more voters on those who seek to get their election. We want all to know that our vote is not free and not to be taken for granted. And therefore, we want to make sure that voters know exactly what they're doing when they go to the ballot, and that those who are elected, that they know that there are those watching to hold them accountable and or support them as applicable. Tonight, we have with us Jonathan Cooper, who is running for a judge seat, District 2. Good evening, Jonathan. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me on the show. I'm very excited to talk to everyone.
Well, thank you for joining us. So I'd like to start off, Jonathan, again. Number first, tell us what exactly does a judge in district court, District 2, what type of cases do they hear, and kind of what is the scope so our audience can understand exactly what that judge should be doing and was capable of.
Absolutely. Thank you. I'm running for North Las Vegas Justice Court Department 2. Essentially, the Justice Court is kind of the base level court for all criminal proceedings. So essentially, what happens is when someone's arrested, if it's a felony, everyone goes through the Justice Court. So I'm going to be dealing with the felony arraignments, dealing with bail settings, dealing with all the issues that revolve around that aspect of the criminal justice system, all the way going through probable cause determination to determine whether or not there's enough evidence to hold someone in custody to ultimately determine if a crime was committed. So that's the criminal aspect of it. I'm also going to be doing evictions. So all aspects of the eviction process, going from the very start of the eviction process, where someone files a 3-day notice or a 5-day notice to vacate, going and moving all the way through the entire process to determine if an eviction is actually needed. We also hold court related to civil cases that have a value amount of less than $10,000. So that would be anything from car accidents, small claims cases, anything that has a value amount of $10,000 or less. It would go before me as well. So it's the neighborhood court is like what I like to say. The district court, once you get to downtown, they deal with the bigger value amounts, millions of dollars, things like that. But when you have issues that are close to home, that's more of a justice court issue.
Okay. Okay, so what is give us an idea of your history and just one, your history in general, and two, in that history, what makes you qualified to move to this level?
Absolutely. Thank you. So just giving a little background, I'm from Las Vegas originally. I'm a Las Vegas kid. I went to El Dorado High School. After graduating from high school, I joined the military. I initially went to basic training through at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, which is in central Missouri. After graduating from basic training, I was selected to do an early commissioning program where I became an United States Army officer through Whitworth Military Academy, which is also in Missouri. After that, I commissioned as an aviation officer, went through my undergrad, and then ultimately graduated from law school from the University of Missouri. I came back home immediately because Las Vegas is my home and I love it. Once I came back home, I was lucky enough to get a job at the district attorney's office, is where I started prosecuting cases. I did that for 7 years. I prosecuted any type of case you can imagine, everything from a traffic ticket all the way up and including murder. I've argued cases in front of the Nevada Supreme Court. After feeling like I completed everything I can do as a prosecutor, I actually switched over and became a defense attorney. So I've seen both sides of the aisle. I was a defense attorney for 4 years. Um, and again, dealing with cases, everything from a traffic ticket all the way up to murders as a defense attorney as well. Doing both those sides, I think, makes me by far the most qualified candidate because I've seen both sides of the aisle. I know when if a prosecutor is saying one thing or if a defense attorney is saying one thing, why they're saying that, why they're doing what they're doing. I know what's reasonable on various different types of cases. For the last 2 years now, I've actually been on the bench. So I'm currently serving as a hearing master with the 8th Judicial District Court, and I do the domestic violence protection orders. So I ensure that victims of domestic violence are kept safe. and I go through the entire process of the issuance of protection orders, the extension of protection orders, and in some cases, when the protection order wasn't warranted, the dissolution of protection orders. And I've been doing that for the last 2 years, so I have judicial temperament already. And like I said, I'm currently serving on the bench. This position is just the next logical step in my progression as a judge. And I think my resume speaks for itself regarding why I'm the most qualified.
So for our uh, audience, can you please educate us? Because I've sat in eviction court as an observer, and I've kind of seen the hearing masters and judges. For our audience, though, can you explain the difference between a hearing master and a judge?
Absolutely. Yeah. So they're very similar in their in what they do on a day-to-day basis. They're the two big differences are that hearing masters are appointed. So instead of being elected, which I'm going for election now, I was appointed by the chief judge. So essentially what happens is it was very similar to like a job interview where I submitted my application. A panel of judges ultimately picked what applications they liked the best, who was the most qualified. That then went to a second round of judges who ultimately decided to have the interviews. They picked, I think it was the top 8 that were the most qualified. Then we went to a different panel, and then they narrowed it down to 3 people. Those 3 people then were up for public comment for 2 weeks. So the public was available to speak regarding why they believe I should get the position or not get the position. And then ultimately, we had a final interview, and I was the top person selected in my class. I was number 1, and then that's how I got the hearing master position. So the big difference, like I said, is appointed. Hearing masters are appointed, judges are elected. The other difference is I only deal with a small set of cases. So judges can deal with a large range of cases. Like I said before, the evictions, the small claims cases, as well as the justice court cases. As a hearing master now, all I deal with is the domestic violence protection order cases. So it's a very limited amount of or type of case. But on a day-to-day basis, everything else is essentially the same. I wear a robe, I sit on the bench, and I preside over cases just like I would as a judge.
So I assume that means you have the same level of authority, and your rulings are still final. In that, obviously, with other outside of any type of appellate system, but your rulings would still be final or carry the same weight as a judge. Then,
So it does to a certain extent. So actually, that would be the third difference is that they can object to my ruling. So if you feel that a judge did something that you don't agree with, your process is called an appeal. If you feel like I did something you don't agree with as a hearing master, your process is called an objection. So from the date I issue my ruling, anyone has 14 days to object. And then when they object, it's very similar to the appellate process, just the name's a little bit different and who you object to is different. So it doesn't go to the Court of Appeals, it goes to the district court, and then the district court ultimately determines if I did something right or wrong. But that is very similar to an appellate process. It's just they have a 14-day time period to determine if they're going to try to object or not.
okay. So I want to make sure I heard you correctly. You have experience as a litigator in the defense side. I think it's on the prosecution side as well. But as a judge, or excuse me, hearing master, your experience is in domestic courts because I've sat in eviction court as hearing master, but you have that breadth of experience as a litigator. So and again, as a defense attorney, and I'm assuming is that limited to the criminal defense, or is there other defenses that you have?
Yeah, so as a defense attorney, it was criminal defense. I do have experience with evictions. So as a law student and as a brand new attorney before I got selected to the district attorney's office, there was a couple months span where I was an attorney while I was still going through the interview process with the DA's office, and I did evictions back then. So I worked for a company that went through the eviction process, and I definitely have experience with the eviction aspect. I have experience with the civil aspect as well because that company also did civil cases. And then obviously the vast majority of my experience comes from the criminal justice system, which is the largest portion of what justice court judges do. In my experience, on average, justice court judges, they have their criminal calendar every day they're on the bench. Their civil calendar is usually only one day because it's a lot smaller. So I think that kind of mirrors what my experience is with as well.
Okay, so let's kind of dissect the two for a second here. Let me start with kind of with criminal. So there is, you know, I'll say the statistical data, if you will, and you can correct me if I'm off base here, that suggests that those who look like us, like Black and brown people, tend to get disproportionately more stringent penalties in the judicial system. uh, I'm not asking you to validate or invalidate whether that's a true statement, but I will ask you what avenues or alternatives to jail do you see within in your tool belt there, and how
Absolutely.
willingly are you to utilize them?
Absolutely, yeah. So I mean, I think the easiest way to answer that question is to say I don't think everyone needs to go to jail, and that's point blank. Period. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, right? Some people have to go to jail
Yeah.
if it's a crime of if it's a violent crime, crime against children, things like that. Repeat offenders that consistently have been given chance after chance, and they just unfortunately are not willing to accept those chances. People do have to go to jail, but I don't think that should ever be the first option available, especially when you're dealing with individuals that this is their first time in the system. This is a young person. This is a person that all they need really is some assistance to actually be able to live up to their potential. And I think that's what sets me apart is that because I was a defense attorney, I understand that. I understand that there's a difference between judging someone based on what they did and saying that they're a bad person. Those are two different things.
Okay.
So I want to ensure that when I'm on the bench, I am going to absolutely ensure that everyone that appears in front of me, I'm going to look at them as a person first and then deal with the behavior second. And like I said, that behavior may ultimately wind them up in jail, and unfortunately, that's just the situation. But I'm definitely never going to start off by saying you're going to jail unless you give me another alternative. In terms of alternatives that are available, and again, being a defense attorney for such a long time, I am fully aware of a lot of the different programs. For example, I am very intimately aware of all the different rehabilitation centers we have, the different treatment courts we have. For example, I know North Las Vegas has a very good veterans treatment court, and that's something that's very near and dear to my heart as being a veteran myself. So I'm going to, when I'm on the bench in North Las Vegas, the first thing I'm going to do is ensure that we are using best practices in our veterans court to make sure that everyone that appears there is getting the best treatment that they can. I know Henderson has a great justice court as well. A good friend of mine, she actually runs that veterans court, so I'm definitely going to reach out to her, get some ideas from her regarding some things we can implement. She's already told me some stuff as well. And
Mhm.
we're going to use all that moving forward to ensure that we are doing everything we can to keep people out of jail, because I think that's ultimately the goal for everyone. Nobody wants to see the jail full. Um, but we have to figure out ways to keep that from happening at the same time, also keeping our community safe.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I don't think anyone, logically at least, believes that there is no circumstance where someone could go to jail. You know, obviously dependent on the level of violence or the level of, how egregious the violation is. Sometimes that is that unfortunately that is what has to be done. And then what many people look at is, okay, in those cases, is the punishment for the Black and brown person different than the person who is of another demographic? So as long I think most people, as long as everyone is treated the same and with that level of humanity that you expressed, I think people will start to regain more faith in the judicial system. I would hope, especially as more become aware of some of the lengths that many judges like yourself do go through before coming to that decision. And I'm glad you mentioned the veterans issue. I know that's a big population here, and I know that there's a new opioid treatment facility coming from the county that should help a lot of people. So I certainly hope we will utilize those before deciding to put someone behind bars or put them behind bars longer than they really should be. So I appreciate that. Switching over to evictions. Um, like I said, I've had the pleasure of sitting as an observer in eviction court, and I've seen judges, or seen the judge, I should say, go through a lot of hurdles to try to work within the legal parameters to be fair to a person's situation, but also respect the rights and of the owner or the landlord. So what type of alternatives do you see should be recognized, utilized when adjudicating an eviction courts?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually I would just echo exactly what you said. I think you have to ensure that you can do everything in your power to prevent somebody from getting an eviction. But obviously you have to make sure that the landlord is taken care of. I think everyone, regardless of what you do, if you're a landlord, if you're a tenant, you absolutely have rights, then they absolutely need to be abided by. The only caution I have regarding actually adjudicating someone and giving them eviction is because it makes them getting an apartment in the future so much harder because of that collateral consequence of having the eviction on their record. And it's honestly just like the jail situation. Sometimes that's what has to happen. And if that's what has to happen, I have no problem doing that. But I think the landlord's goal of either being paid rent or having the person removed from the residence can oftentimes be accomplished without having to actually adjudicate someone and put an eviction on their record. And that could be solely I've seen situations where if both parties come in, the landlord says, hey, they're not paying, they need to get out. And then the person's like, okay, I have no problem getting out. Just give me a week. Okay, well, at that situation, there's no reason for me to try to say no, you're going to be evicted and move through that process if they've already agreed to remove themselves and giving them a week. Now, obviously, if that week comes and goes and they're still there, then obviously we have a different situation we need to deal with. But the vast majority of the time, I think the situation gets to the point where the landlord wants them to leave and they honestly want to leave too. And all we have to do is just figure out what's a reasonable amount of time to allow them to leave, right? If they say they need 90 days to leave and they haven't paid in 90 days, that's obviously probably not reasonable because
Right.
nobody should be able to live for free for 6 months. That's just not okay. But if they're saying they want a week, I think a week is pretty reasonable, right? And then it just depends on other things. Maybe it's 10 days because they have two kids and it's a 5 bedroom house. Okay. You just have to be able to balance both sides rights and balance both sides wants. And actually that's one thing I didn't mention is in law school I actually received a certificate in alternative dispute resolution. So that means that I took a lot of classes related to mediation and negotiation. And what I've realized is that when you ask people up front what they want to see happen, oftentimes you can get to the bottom of both people's issue and resolve it without having to go through like I said, the formal eviction process is what we're talking about now. If you ask the landlord, what do you want to see happen? Ask the tenant, what do you want to see happen? And find what the middle ground is. I think that's 99 times out of 100 the best result that you can do. And that's actually something that I think the family court's doing a little bit more of because they have the mediation center where people, for example, if they're going through a divorce and they have children, they're required to do the mediation because when the parties are the ones that agree to what's going on, I think everyone's happier. Everyone knows what the expectations are. Everyone's understands what their role is, and they're not just looking at me as the judge to just make a final decision, which, quite frankly, a lot of times nobody agrees with. So I think that's something I definitely am going to use a lot in the eviction process.
I thank you for your efforts to try to be fair and judicious in executing decisions. There are a lot of humans out there who are in a bad situation. And I'm glad you said you can separate the issue or the situation from the person. And some people, I've seen again sitting in court, guy who lost his job and had 5 kids and was struggling. And he just needed a little bit more time because he had been job interviews, whatever. And I've fortunately seen a judge work within those parameters that you just described. So I know that those tools are available when there is a judge willing to exercise that humanity and utilize those options. So with that, is there any stone I've left unturned here that any message you would like to get out, or people want people to know about you?
Absolutely, yeah. I just want people to know that I truly care about this community. This community, I like I said, I'm born and raised here. I've seen Las Vegas grow from a city of, I think when I was a kid, we had less than 1 million people. Now here we are over 3 million people, and I've seen the constant growth, and that makes me so proud to be able to say that I'm from here. Even when I was living in Missouri, it's so funny because if I tell people, oh, I went to school in Columbia, Missouri, 99% of people don't know where Columbia, Missouri is. But I've been all around the world, and I'm talking in Africa. I've been to Asia, Europe. And when I tell people I'm from Las Vegas, everyone knows where that is. And that to me makes me so proud to be able to be from a place that no matter where you are in the world, you know of. And I think I take that very deeply and in my heart that I'm here to serve this community, and I want to make sure that our community continues to thrive the way it has been for the almost 40 years that I've been a member of it. So I just want to definitely thank you for giving me the opportunity to make sure voters know who I am, give them a little bit of a idea of me as a person. And if they ever have any questions for me, my website is Cooper for Judge. It goes directly to me. So when you email someone on that website, I'm the one that's going to get it. So if you ever have any questions or you want to know where I stand on an issue, I'm not going to run away from your question. So again, it's Cooper, and then it's the number 4judge.com. And I really hope to hear from people because I want to continue to connect with my neighbors.
Right. Thank you so much for allowing us to share this space and get to know you. So again, our objective is to have more informed voters, especially in this down ballot, because you are the ones who actually affect our daily lives more intimately than the presidential election. We want to have more informed voters, not trying to sway anyone one way or the other. However, you as a candidate resonates with them. That's their individual choice. They just at least now know who this is versus I don't know who this person is. They're just checking a box. And hopefully we need more people who look like us, who understand our plight and our situations, our socioeconomic circumstances, and understand humanity. So again, thank you for sharing the space with us and giving us an idea of who you are. With that, I will bid all of our listeners and watchers a good day. And Mr. Cooper, you have a great one as well.
Thank you very much. Nice talking with you.